Sometimes the smallest gestures can reveal the deepest cracks in a relationship. Imagine this. Your spouse hands you a book titled How to Be a Real Man. Not with a smile, not with a joke, just drops it on the counter like an accusation and walks away. No wrapping, no explanation, just the crinkled bookstore receipt still tucked inside. It felt less like a gift and more like a verdict. I stood there, frozen, my hand hovering over the cover, my chest tightening. Her expression, or lack of one, said everything. Blank eyes, absent interest. That's when it hit me. This wasn't playful or sarcastic. This was calculated, cold, and cruel. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I placed the book on her pillow and left an empty box beside it. Light, hollow, symbolic. When she found it the next morning, she glanced at me, then the box. I simply shrugged and said, "If I'm not enough, go find someone who is." She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, didn't even blink, just muttered, "Okay," as if agreeing to pick up groceries, and walked out, wearing makeup she hadn't touched in months and a top I hadn't seen since our early days together. Something shifted after that day. By the end of the week, she joined a new gym, changed her ringtone, started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. She laughed louder at texts, but never mentioned who they were from. A couple of weeks later, while reorganizing the hallway closet, I stumbled upon her old gym bag, the one she used to cherish, the one with Mrs. Thorne stitched in gold thread from our honeymoon. It was unzipped, and inside was a motel receipt. 2 nights, king room, paid in cash. The name on the receipt? B.J. Cutler. Whoever he was, it certainly wasn't me. I stared at that slip of paper, half expecting it to combust in my hands. A king-sized bed, 2 nights, and a stranger's name. My wife's monogrammed bag held the evidence of a life she'd been quietly constructing without me. My hands trembled, not from anger, though that would have been simpler. It was worse than rage. A slow, suffocating realization crept over me. I'd been living in a house that no longer felt like mine, sharing a bed with someone whose secrets had grown larger than us both. I sank onto the stairs, trying to recall the last time we'd shared a genuine laugh, the last time she looked at me like I mattered. Had it been months, years, or had I just stopped noticing? When she came home that evening, she smelled like citrus and something else. Guilt. She tossed her purse onto the counter and avoided meeting my eyes. The receipt was folded neatly in my pocket, burning against my leg like a loaded weapon. I could have thrown it down, demanded answers, screamed or whispered, "Why?" But instead, I asked, "How was your day?" "Fine," she replied without hesitation. "You?" Her casual tone stung more than any lie. I wanted her to confess, to unravel the tangled web herself, but she didn't, and maybe that was the hardest part of all. I hoped she would make a mistake, give me a reason that would justify my confrontation, but no, she didn't. She calmly poured herself a glass of wine, propped her feet up, and scrolled through her phone as if nothing was wrong. Her nonchalance infuriated me. So I turned to the internet. Not for her, but for him. B.J. Cutler. Who was he? A quick search revealed more than I expected. He wasn't some random guy. He was from her high school. On her class's public Facebook page, I found a photo from their reunion. There he was, front and center, wearing an absurd leather vest and sunglasses indoors, with a smug grin plastered across his face. The kind of smile that made me question if he'd ever had a profound thought in his life. Strangely, I couldn't recall her mentioning him at all, ever. No casual, "Oh, BJ messaged me out of the blue," or "Guess who I ran into?" Just silence. Secrets thrive when left unspoken. That night, while she showered, I gave in to temptation. I checked her phone. Yes, I know, it was wrong. But if you've ever stood on the edge of your own unraveling life, you'll understand how curiosity can push you forward before you're ready. I didn't find any texts, but her browser history told a story. Flights to Phoenix, one-way tickets, multiple tabs open, all leading to the same destination. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning an escape. And I, her husband, was clueless. Phoenix. She'd never mentioned it, not once, not even casually. Yet there it was, glaring back at me. Flight searches stacked one after another, each pointing toward a one-way route. I sat frozen, the glow of the screen illuminating my face like a flashlight in a cavern I hadn't realized I was trapped in. My wife wasn't simply drifting away. She was plotting her exit as if I were a bad investment gone sour. How had I missed this? While folding her laundry and fixing our perpetually clogged sink, I'd been oblivious. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing. My mind raced. Who is this woman next to me? Who has she become? Every night she retreated to the far edge of the bed, her phone locked behind a passcode. A new habit, unlike the openness we once shared. Why now? Was she texting him, planning, escaping? I wanted to confront her, shake her awake, and demand answers. Where are you going? Who is B.J. Cutler? But then doubt crept in. What if she welcomed my discovery? What if she'd been waiting for me to catch her, giving her an excuse to leave without guilt? I wasn't prepared for that. Not yet. I craved the truth, but not her version of it. The next morning, I took the plunge. Have you been thinking about leaving? My voice cracked mid-sentence, betraying my vulnerability. She paused, her expression unreadable. Then came her reply. Why would you ask that? It wasn't a denial, it was evasion. She poured coffee as though it were any ordinary day, humming along to the radio. No argument, no explanation. Just awkward silence stretched thin between us, two people pretending to still be married. My heart pounded so loudly I barely tasted my breakfast. I needed more answers. When she stepped into the shower, I made my move. I went to her car. Inside, I searched frantically but carefully. Under the seats, in the glove compartment, anywhere she might hide something. That's when I found it. A receipt tucked beneath the passenger seat. A rental agreement for storage space in Phoenix. The pieces clicked together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. She wasn't just planning an escape, she was building a new life elsewhere, without me. When she emerged from the shower, towel wrapped around her, I held up the receipt. Her eyes widened briefly before she masked her surprise. "What's this?" I asked, my tone steadier than I felt. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Just something for work," she lied smoothly. Work? The lie stung more than I expected. I stared at her, searching for the woman I thought I knew. But she was gone, replaced by someone else entirely, someone I couldn't recognize. Days passed in tense silence. Conversations were clipped, forced. We tiptoed around each other, neither willing to address the elephant in the room. Meanwhile, I continued digging. I reached out to mutual acquaintances, piecing together fragments of information. Some confirmed my fears. She'd reconnected with BJ months ago. Others hinted at plans she'd discussed privately, plans that excluded me. Each revelation chipped away at whatever remained of my trust. Finally, I confronted her again. This time, I laid everything bare. The flights, the storage unit, the lies. Her initial shock melted into resignation. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she admitted quietly. Those words hit harder than her betrayal, as if the method of discovery mattered more than the betrayal itself. She explained, haltingly, that she'd fallen out of love, that staying felt suffocating, that BJ offered her a fresh start. Fresh start. The phrase echoed in my mind, hollow and cruel. In the end, I let her go. Not because I forgave her, but because holding on meant losing myself completely. Watching her pack her things, I realized something. Relationships aren't built on love alone. They require honesty, effort, and mutual respect. Without those, they crumble under the weight of secrets and lies. Her departure left scars, yes, but also clarity. Moving forward wouldn't be easy, but at least I knew where I stood. The door opened without resistance. Inside, I discovered something I hadn't realized I was searching for, an old iPad tucked under the seat, still connected to her iCloud. She must have either forgotten about it or simply didn't care. Regardless, it became a portal I wasn't prepared to peer through. Messages, photos, notes, not just from B or J, but multiple people filled the device. Yet, one thread stood out. Theirs. They had given it a nickname, Plan B, marked with a kiss emoji. In their exchanges, they mocked me, calling me soft serve. They laughed about how oblivious I was, claiming she deserved this after years of babysitting a man-child. Each message cut deeper than the last, but it was a voice note that truly broke me. Her voice echoed coldly. He handed me a box and told me to go find a real man. So I did. The laughter at the end, their shared amusement, was unbearable. I closed the iPad, gripping the steering wheel as if it could keep me from falling apart. My hands were slick with sweat, my face burning. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. And yet, I said nothing. The next morning, I left before dawn. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. Her presence now made my skin crawl. How easily she smiled at me, spoke to me, slept beside me, all while living another life entirely. I drove to a grocery store parking lot 3 blocks away and sat there, the iPad on my lap, rereading everything. There were memes mocking me, screenshots of my texts ridiculed, even a draft breakup message titled "Soon." In it, she described me as safe, predictable, and passive. That last word hit hardest because she was right. I'd always avoided conflict, letting her take control of conversations, finances, friendships, everything. I thought being agreeable equated to love. Instead, she saw it as weakness. She craved someone who'd fight back, slam doors, leave her breathless, not someone who cried during dog movies or brought her soup when she was sick. She didn't want comfort. She wanted chaos. By lunchtime, I returned home. Her car was gone again, but this time something caught my eye. The spare house key, usually hanging by the door, was missing. Paranoia crept in, twisting into something uglier. Was she giving him access? I checked the back entrance. Faint boot marks marred the mud near the garden. Size 12 or 13, not mine. I snapped pictures, though I wasn't sure what to do with them. I wasn't a detective, just a man trying to confirm the gut-wrenching suspicion he'd been too afraid to voice. Later that night, I stayed silent, observing her every move. She came home carrying fast food, for herself only. Her hair tousled, cheeks flushed like she'd stepped off a roller coaster. She radiated an energy I hadn't seen in years. When she noticed me staring, she merely muttered, "What?" before heading upstairs. 5 minutes later, I followed. From the hallway, I watched as she chatted on FaceTime. She lay on the bed, her feet swaying lightly in the air, whispering into her phone with a tone I once knew so well. But it wasn't meant for me anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. She didn't notice me as I passed by the door. Why would she? I hadn't said a word, but my mind was already racing, plotting what to do next. She didn't even bother to hang up when I walked past, so certain was she that I wouldn't dare interrupt. That's how invisible I'd become in her eyes, a harmless shadow pacing through the house, unworthy of attention. I paused just out of sight, leaning against the wall, listening to her voice dip into that sugary sweetness she never used with me now. I couldn't make out every word, but fragments reached me. "I miss the way you," followed by a soft giggle. Then came the dagger. "He has no idea." Silence followed. Thick, heavy, the kind that precedes secrets, spilling across boundaries they shouldn't cross. I stood there frozen, my fingers curling into fists, nails digging painfully into my palms. It wasn't anger coursing through me. I didn't have room for that emotion anymore. What filled me instead was shame. Shame that I had to lurk in my own home, eavesdropping to discover whether my wife still possessed the ability to deceive. And oh, she did. She had plenty left in her. Eventually, she ended the call and went to bed as though nothing unusual had happened. Meanwhile, I stayed downstairs. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in that room anymore. The bed felt foreign, like part of a performance I hadn't been invited to join. Around 2 a.m., I opened the app connected to our front door camera on my phone. A week's worth of footage played back, all eerily similar. Her leaving late at night, returning even later, sometimes alone, sometimes not. One particular night stood out. She came back with someone else. A tall figure whose face blurred under the dim light, but his posture spoke volumes. He strode ahead confidently, as if he owned the place. She trailed behind him, laughing, glancing over her shoulder before disappearing around the side of the house. She never brought him through the front door, not once. That entrance belonged to me, or at least it used to. She kept up appearances, preserving the illusion not for my sake, but for hers. At the dinner table, she played the role of the devoted wife, while elsewhere, she acted out an entirely different script. Heartbreak wasn't what I felt anymore. Instead, I felt foolish, like someone who'd been robbed and then apologized to the thief for carrying valuables. By morning, I'd packed a bag, not because I intended to leave immediately, but because I wanted to see how she'd react. I placed the suitcase upright by the door, wallet and keys resting conspicuously on top. When she descended the stairs and spotted it, her eyes widened for the briefest moment. She masked her reaction quickly, but I saw it, the flicker of something. Fear? Or perhaps disappointment that I might actually leave. "Heading somewhere?" she asked casually, stirring her coffee as if this were any ordinary day. "Maybe," I replied, studying her closely. "Depends on what you say without looking at me," I thought silently. "On whether you want me to stay." She didn't respond directly, merely sipped her coffee and smiled. That smile said everything. Soft, measured, deliberate. It gutted me. It wasn't warm or pleading. It didn't ask me to stay. It was the practiced smile of someone who'd rehearsed their lines until they sounded convincing. A smile that didn't try to hold me back. A smile that whispered, "Do what you wish. My choice is already made." And in that moment, standing by the kitchen island, it hit me. She wasn't hiding anything anymore. She didn't need to. In her mind, she'd already won. I left my bag by the door all day, but she never mentioned it. Not once. Instead, she spent the afternoon chatting on speakerphone with a coworker, then listened to a true crime podcast while folding her laundry, acting as if she weren't tearing our marriage apart one deliberate day at a time. I kept waiting for her to crack, to falter, to say, "Okay, I've gone too far." But she didn't, and maybe she never would. That evening she went out again. Pilates, she said, though her mat hadn't budged in weeks. Something inside me snapped. I followed her. It felt absurd. I'm not the type of guy who does things like this. I get nervous parallel parking, let alone tailing someone. Still, I stayed 2 cars behind, headlights off, hands trembling on the wheel. She drove 20 minutes to the edge of town, where a row of motels catered to people who preferred anonymity. No signs, no cameras, no questions asked. She parked and stepped out without hesitation, phone in hand, texting someone. I waited, my mind racing. What was I even planning to do? Burst in? Knock on the door like some desperate character from a soap opera? Then it got worse. Another car pulled up, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. Out stepped a man in a tailored jacket. Not an old flame or anyone from her past. This man exuded confidence, clean-shaven, polished, sharp. He wasn't part of her history. He was shaping her future. She ran to him, actually ran, with arms wide open, her face glowing like a child's on Christmas morning. The way he kissed her wasn't rushed or guilty. It was slow, proud, possessive. He wasn't just a fling. He was her next chapter. And I barely registered as a footnote. I drove away before they even entered the room. I couldn't go home right away. I just drove, aimlessly, letting the roads take me wherever they led. It felt like I was watching my life unfold from a distance, as though I were a ghost trapped in someone else's car. Streetlights passed overhead in a blur, but my mind kept replaying her smile. Not the one she gave me, but the one she gave him. That version of her no longer existed in our house. If I was honest, it had been gone far longer than I cared to admit. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car for half an hour. The house looked the same as always, dark, silent, unassuming. But it wasn't my home anymore. It was just a place I happened to live. I walked in, dropped my keys, and saw her shoes by the door, the same heels she'd worn to meet him. She was already back, freshly showered, pretending nothing had happened. From the bedroom, she called out casually, "Hey, did you eat?" I didn't answer. I stood in the kitchen staring at the faucet, my reflection distorted in the stainless steel. The man she kissed had taken my place, my wife, my life. I hadn't shouted or lost my temper. When I finally entered the bedroom, she was on her phone as usual. She glanced up with that same indifference. "Everything okay?" she asked. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her, really looked. She wasn't older or crueler. She just seemed detached, like someone who'd already checked out emotionally and was waiting for the practicalities to align. So I asked directly, "Are you in love with him?" She paused, not out of surprise, but to gauge how much to reveal. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied slowly, deliberately. That was it. The betrayal wasn't the affair itself. It was the denial, the refusal to acknowledge the pain she'd caused. That's when I realized I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was waiting for someone who no longer existed. That night, while she slept soundly as if nothing had changed, I opened my laptop and made plans. Not for revenge or confrontation, but for my escape. The next morning, there were no slammed doors, no yelling or tears, no demands for answers I'd already uncovered. I dressed quietly, zipped up the suitcase I'd left by the door for days, and scribbled a note on a yellow sticky pad. "You don't have to fake it anymore." I placed it on the kitchen counter beside the book she'd given me, How to Be a Real Man. I smiled to myself because maybe being a real man wasn't what she thought. Maybe it was leaving without becoming the version of myself she tried to make me believe I should be. I didn't take everything, just the essentials, my laptop, some clothes, my worn notebook, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. When I closed the front door behind me, I didn't look back. I didn't wait to see if she noticed I was gone. Chances are she wouldn't, at least not right away. And that was fine. I stayed in a modest rental outside of town. No drama, no distractions, just quiet. In that silence, I discovered something important. I hadn't lost myself. Instead, I'd handed pieces of myself over bit by bit to keep her happy. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking whether I was happy too. Healing didn't come quickly, but it arrived unexpectedly. In old friends reaching out once they learned what happened, in aimless late-night walks, and coffee shops where no one knew my name and anonymity felt freeing. Eventually, clarity came. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to suffer. All I needed was to remember who I was before I let someone else define my worth. A month later, she texted, "I didn't expect you to actually leave." I didn't respond, because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. If you were in his position, would you have confronted her or walked away like he did? What moment in this story stands out to you most? Certainly. Here's the revised text. Remember, you're in a space where honesty and vulnerability matter. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch up again soon. Until then, take care and keep sharing your thoughts. We're all here to learn and grow together. See you next time. Let me know if you need further adjustments.